You know what's interesting? Right now, someone just bought something expensive during the 11/11 sale, and they'll never tell a soul. No unboxing, no story, no, look what I got. Nothing. Meanwhile, your feed is flooded with people showing off every single purchase. So here's the real question. What does staying silent say about someone's psychology? Today, I'm breaking down 3 types of people who don't post their purchases, and one of them is probably you. Let's find out which. Here's what most people don't realize. Posting your purchases isn't just about showing off. It's about validation. Every like, every comment, every OMG, where'd you get that? Triggers a dopamine hit in your brain, the same chemical that made shopping feel good in the first place. But some people have disconnected from that cycle entirely. They buy, they enjoy, they move on. And that silence? It reveals something most of us are too afraid to admit about ourselves. So let's talk about the 3 types, starting with the one that might make you uncomfortable. The first type doesn't post because they genuinely don't care if you know. Not in a rude way, in a "my happiness doesn't require witnesses" way. Psychologists call this intrinsic motivation, when the reward is in the experience itself, not the applause afterward. Here's a quick test. Think about the last thing you bought that made you really happy. Now imagine never telling anyone about it. Does it lose its value? If your answer is no, you might be this type. Here's why this matters. Most of us have been conditioned to believe that joy isn't real unless it's shared, that if nobody saw it, it didn't count. But people in this category have broken that pattern. They've realized something powerful. External validation is rented happiness. Internal satisfaction is ownership. When they click order complete, the transaction is already emotionally fulfilled. Posting it would almost cheapen it, like turning something sacred into content. Now here's where it gets controversial. Some people think this type is just humble or private, but honestly, it's deeper than that. It's freedom. Freedom from needing approval, freedom from comparison, freedom from performing your life for an audience. And that kind of confidence, it doesn't need a caption. The second type doesn't post because they've learned that attention isn't always kind. Let me tell you a quick story. I once knew someone who posted a designer bag they saved months for. Within hours, the comments rolled in. Must be nice to have money. Fake vibes. Why would you spend that much? She never posted a purchase again. Not because she was ashamed, but because she realized something. Privacy is power. Psychologists call this selective self-presentation. We all choose what parts of ourselves we show to the world, and some people have decided that their purchases, their joy, their little wins, those are off limits. Here's the difference between Type 1 and Type 2. Type 1 doesn't post because they don't need validation. Type 2 doesn't post because they're protecting their peace. They're not hiding, they're curating. There's a difference. They've realized that not everything deserves an audience, that some joys are meant to stay small, personal, untouched by judgment. And honestly, in a world where everyone's life is a performance, that's an act of self-care. The mantra of Type 2, if it makes me happy, that's enough. I don't owe anyone proof. If you felt that, you might be this type. Now, the third type is different, and honestly, the most relatable. These are the people who want to share, but don't. They take the photo, write the caption, then delete it. They wonder, will people think I'm bragging? What if they judge how much I spent? Is this even post-worthy? Psychologists call this the spotlight effect. We assume people are paying way more attention to us than they actually are. Here's the truth. Most people will scroll past your post in 0.3 seconds. They're too busy worrying about their own feed. But for Type 3, that fear of being misunderstood keeps them quiet. And here's the tricky part. Their silence looks like Type 1's confidence, but it's not. It's caution. It's anxiety wrapped in overthinking. So, how do you know if you're Type 3? Ask yourself, if I knew no one would judge me, would I post it? If the answer is yes, you're not emotionally independent. You're socially aware to the point of self-censorship. And that's okay. But it's worth noticing, because the difference between Type 1 and Type 3 is this. Type 1 doesn't need the applause. Type 3 wants it, but fears the judgment more. One is freedom. The other is a cage you've built yourself. So here's what all three types have in common. They've all questioned the relationship between visibility and value. We live in a world that says, if it's not posted, it didn't happen. But people who don't share their 11/11 hauls are quietly rewriting that rule. They're saying, my joy doesn't need your validation to be real. And whether that comes from confidence, protection, or overthinking, it's a form of rebellion. Here's the science. Every time you post and get likes, your brain releases dopamine. That's the same chemical that made shopping addictive in the first place. But the moment you stop feeding that cycle, you start building emotional autonomy, the ability to feel good without needing applause. And that's not loneliness, that's liberation. So maybe people who don't post their purchases aren't missing out on attention. They're protecting the purity of their satisfaction. So tell me, which type are you? Type 1, the emotionally free. You don't need witnesses to feel joy. Type 2, the peace protector. You've learned that privacy is power. Type 3, the overthinker. You want to share, but fear holds you back. Drop a number in the comments. 1, 2, or 3. No judgment, just curiosity. And hey, if you caught yourself nodding at any of these, hit subscribe. Because next week, we're talking about the psychology of people who overshare. And trust me, that one's going to sting. Real confidence doesn't shout. It smiles quietly in the background. See you next time.